This bearing that was on their shelf was at least two to 3 days out, with another, $6 to $10 of shipping that you have to pay for it. Hey, welcome back to the channel. We appreciate you coming back and watching our stuff. I had a little bit of an experience today with a singular part, and wanted to kind of talk to you about it because, you have this roller coaster of ups and downs and issues sometimes when it comes to buying parts electronically or searching for parts electronically, either if you're doing it on your own, on your handy dandy personal electronic device, or if you're trying to get somebody at the parts store to do a little digging, either electronically or through the books, the old-fashioned way. It used to be, if you went to the parts store not too long ago and you needed something that wasn't electronically, computer-wise connected to a particular make, model, year of car, they pull out a book, those antique things with pictures and words in them and several pages, and they'd find it, they'd look it up. Those days are kind of long gone. But today we had to get a little creative in finding a bearing, and I'll show you what I'm talking about. So we're doing a little work on our own junk today, and just doing some maintenance and that kind of thing. And last week we found that our Jeep needed a distributor cap and a rotor. This is GM 250 HEI distributor with a AMC V8 gear on it, swapped over into the 258 from our 79 CJ. And while we were doing that, we put that in this afternoon. No big deal. Started it up and just kind of gave her a little check over, listen for whistles and creaks and squeaks and everything else. And we heard something. It sounded like there was a bad bearing either in this York compressor. This is not, our Jeep doesn't have AC. This is for onboard air. Or the power steering, or this idler pulley fits here with an adjuster thingy and keeps this belt tight for the onboard air. Well, lo and behold, the sound was coming from this idler pulley. So really, no big deal. I've replaced the bearing in this pulley before, and actually not too long ago, so I was a little bit surprised it was starting to growl on us. And it was fairly generic. I remembered that. However, I managed to get the bearing. It was in stock and fairly easy to obtain. So we started out by trying to get a clean number off of this thing. The number was really hard to read at first, and so we kind of went with plan B right out of the gate, and we measured it. And here's the measurements. Inside diameter 0.669, outside diameter 1.575, and then the width, this from here, is 0.472. We get out the handy pocket computer and we start Googleizing it. Okay, yeah, fairly generic bearing apparently. And there's some internet sources for it, anything from $3 or $4 to $20, depending on the source and probably quality and that kind of thing. But I thought we could do better, so we click on a couple of the links, maybe for the Napa Valley store, that pop up when you Google search a bearing with those dimensions. And there's a couple options through the Napa Valley. So we call the Napa Valley and give them those options. And they say, oh yeah, we can get that, but it's quite a ways away. You're gonna have to pay extra shipping because it's not something that comes out of one of the major warehouses, or we can get from another store. Well, that's strange. I know I've done this before. This bearing's actually not that old, few years old. I know they're easier to get than that. So what do you do next? Well, we take another look at the bearing, and we had to get the handy dandy lighted magnifier out, but we were able to come up with a number, 6203-2RSH/030JN. So as you start to Googleize that number, when you get to 6203-2RS, it becomes a very common generalized bearing size. So we Googled that. And again, we kind of get some, anywhere from Tractor Supply to apparently this bearing fits a lot of spindles into like your average everyday riding lawnmowers, whether it's a John Deere, MTD, Troy built, something like that. But nothing that really says, hey, you can run in to a physical store and buy this thing today. So we do a little bit more digging through the interwebs using just the 6203-2RS, and in doing that we come up with the number 203FF, and that number belongs to, and I got it written down up here, it belongs to, according to the interweb, a national bearing with these three same measurements. Now it doesn't have all this long number behind the 203, but these numbers here are the same according to the interweb. So then we take the 20FF and we go back to the Napa Valley page and the O'Reilly's page, and guess what? Very common bearing in stock at both stores. By now the Napa Valley store in my local town is closed, but we do have an Irish parts store. So we go, and again, we're dealing with the computer age, but there's a couple people at the Irish parts store that still get it and understand. When you do this, if you're looking for a particular number, and you can look it up on the store's website or app with that number, the way I do it is I walk in the door and I show them my phone or whatever, and I say I need to look at one of these. Try not to even start with a what's it for, what's it fit, what year, what model, that kind of thing. Start here. Start with this number. We already know it's supposed to measure like this, and I took the old one. I took this one with me. So they had this bearing in the Irish parts store brand and in the national brand, and that's what I'm holding on to right here. Looky there, exactly the same. A little over $10, and I'm back on the road in the same day. Whereas if I had allowed them to look it up using those dimensions, they would have come across some sort of an application, and this bearing that was on their shelf was at least two to 3 days out, with another $6 to $10 of shipping that you have to pay for it. So the moral of this story is you might spend just a little bit of time deciphering between what Google tells you, what the parts stores tell you, and what the part itself tells you. If you can be patient and work through some of those processes until you get what you think is something pretty close, you might just come out okay. So for $10, I had the part I needed the same day, walked out of the store. I was really happy about that. And then they also had it in National, right? So not just the what's the Irish brand, I forget, but this is going on my Jeep, so I said, yeah, give me the National one. It's a little bit more money, but it's worth it, right? So he brings me the National box, and I kind of like it already because it looks like it's been on the shelf for a while, and this and that and the other. I'm like, yeah, this is the stuff right here. And then we got the made in the China. I'm like, you know, I almost said, give me the cheap brand. Maybe it's not made in the China, but it's still a Federal Mogul, you know, bearing, but it's made in China. So I think we're fine. It's just, you know how it goes. You gotta kind of complain about something, but in the end, we got the part we needed, same day. We're gonna toss this in the Jeep, and we'll be back up and running. So that's a little snippet on good things and the bad things about the interweb and being able to research parts. If you dig into the weeds, you'll find what you need, but as you dig through the weeds, you need to be careful that you're going in the right direction. So use a couple different sources of information, and you know, make sure you can double check the part that you're getting. If you don't walk into the parts store nowadays with year, make, model, even the parts people might be struggling a little bit. So appreciate you watching this little tidbit. We're gonna throw this back together. Thanks for watching. We'll catch you on the next one.